I'm Sharon Tong. Welcome to In Parliament. MPs in the House today spent some time tackling the issue of making sure Singaporeans are not discriminated against when companies hire. Answering several questions on the Fair Consideration Framework, Acting Manpower Minister Tan Chuan Jin emphasised that there are no exemptions to the need for firms to consider Singaporeans fairly in the hiring process. Under the new rules, firms making new employment pass applications must advertise the job vacancy in a new jobs bank for at least 14 days. The advertisement must be open to Singaporeans. Mr. Tan explained why smaller firms were exempted from this advertising requirement.
As we believe that many smaller businesses do not necessarily have the sophisticated HR management to process many of these applications. One could argue whether it should be 20, whether it should be 30. Well, in our judgment, we believe that 25, in discussions with the tripartite partners, that 25 would be the number to start off with. More importantly, however, applying the FCF to the larger firms will also yield the greatest benefit, given that they employ most of the EP holders, and they also generally offer jobs which are more sought after by Singaporeans.
Mr. Tan also explained that jobs paying a salary of $12,000 and above a month are also exempted from the advertising requirement because open advertising is usually not done for such jobs. He said such jobs cover only 5% of the local workforce. Mr. Tan stressed that the advertising requirement is just one part of the framework.
The FCF is not just about the advertising requirement. It is also about MOM playing a much more active role to engage firms that do not seem to be doing enough to hire and develop Singaporean PMEs. However, while the FCF signals acceptable norms in HR practices, it is also important for us to understand that it is not the intent, nor is it desirable for us to ensure that every single PME jobs will go to Singaporeans. I think we do need to make sure that the economy remains competitive.
Still, several MPs had concerns about the criteria of the framework. They felt there could be loopholes which can be taken advantage of.
How would MOM view advertisement in the jobs bank put up by recruitment agencies that specializes in hiring employees on work passes only? So it means they are actually specialized company hiring employees on work passes. So when they advertise in the jobs bank, obviously their intention is clear. They intend to hire foreigners. So how would MOM apply the FCF on such companies?
In this case, it would obviously trigger the second criteria, which is for us to go in to look at companies in a much more detailed fashion. For a number of reasons. One, there will be, or perhaps allegations of unfair recruitment patterns brought forward by Singaporeans. For example, there will be jobs where Singaporeans have applied for. They felt that they are eminently qualified, but however, for one reason or other, they are not hired. It is not for us to question companies per se, but I think if there are certain patterns that occur, I think we will go in and look in detail at how these companies conduct their business.
Many developed countries have also implemented similar frameworks. So I just want to ask the MOM, what are some of the best practices and lessons learned from some of these countries in which we've plugged in some of these loopholes in which are exploited by employers?
It is not a silver bullet. These measures will not completely solve every single problem because a lot of it is about attitudes and mindsets. But what we are doing is to signal clearly, and especially when there are complaints and when there are sectors that fall short of what we deem are perhaps acceptable levels, we would go in and look at it in detail.
Mr. Tan also replied to questions pertaining to the number of small firms that employ employment pass holders. He shared that as of the first half of 2013, there were 20,000 firms which have 25 employees or less. On average, each of these companies had about 2 EP holders. The larger firms had an average of about 80 EP holders. Now, athletes with the potential to bring national pride at international competitions like the Olympic Games will be considered for deferment from full-time national service. Defence Minister Ng Hen said the athletes must show why it's necessary for them to train full-time. Dr. Ng also cited national swimmer Joseph Schooling as an example of an approved case.
Included in the appeal were detailed plans which outline his training schedule and targets with the goal to represent Singapore and compete successfully in the swimming competitions of the 2016 Olympic Games. The Ministry for Culture, Community and Youth supported the appeal for deferment as they assessed that based on his previous achievements in international competitions, Mr. Schooling had the potential to do well in the next Olympic Games.
MediaCorp's decision to seize the teletext service was a commercial one made in consultation with the Ministry of Communications and Information. This was revealed in Parliament by Minister for Communications and Information, Dr. Yaacob Ibrahim. He said the number of people accessing daily stock price information on teletext this year dropped by 85% from 2011. Only 28,000 were still accessing this information on teletext as of this year. Dr. Yaacob said MediaCorp's decision is no different from broadcasters in countries such as the UK, Australia and New Zealand. Having said that, Dr. Yaacob acknowledged that some, especially the elderly, are affected by the cessation of the service. They may find it difficult to access information such as finances, weather and flight information on the internet where it is readily available. Dr. Yaacob said the Infocom Development Authority of Singapore, or IDA, has been running the Silver Infocom initiative to help seniors get online. The Media Development Authority has also been working with IDA to facilitate the reach of the program. He added seniors without home internet access can use more than 120 free web-serving points or hotspots situated at community clubs, libraries and at self-help group centres. But opposition MP KHIANG referred to a 2009 IDA survey that showed less than 15% of those aged 60 and above use the internet or computers.
In a situation like such, how did, IDA confidently say that, it will be a smooth transition for the elderly to be able to access information with the discontinuation of the teletext? Is the minister aware that there were quite a lot of complaints on the ground from the elderly about the discontinued service? What is the minister's answer to that?
The ministry and MediaCorp both received a lot of feedback from the ground, especially from the elderly, about the cessation of the teletext service. We must expect that people who are impacted will be upset, and therefore we have to offer them alternatives. But to answer his second question, the program is ongoing. In fact, we have started the program well before the cessation of the service to get our seniors on board onto the digital bandwagon. Many programs have been rolled out by IDA and MDA to help our seniors to migrate to a digital sort of lifestyle. I can go through the long list of the programs that IDA and MDA have been doing long before 2011 because we recognize that we have to build a digitally inclusive society. Data shows, which was shared by MediaCorp, that only 28,000 have been accessing the teletext. It does not mean that this 28,000 does not have an alternative. It's just that they are using teletext because it's available, right? At the moment, the kinds of services that we're providing to the seniors through our Silver Infocom Initiative program, we have trained about 77,000 seniors. And the program is ongoing. So finally, the decision to cease is actually a commercial decision by MediaCorp, of course in consultation with the ministry.
Housing was another hotly debated issue in the House today. National Development Minister Koh Boon Wan says Singaporeans who are just below 55 years old may be allowed to buy HDB studio apartments. He said this will be assessed on a case-by-case basis if a studio apartment is the most suitable housing option for them. Mr. Koh also added the prices of these apartments were affordable.
I remember we started off with about 60,000 for a unit. Today is much more. And secondly, in view of the shorter term of the lease whole and also the area, whether the selling price currently is actually quite expensive compared to BTO flat, for instance.
I do not know which year was the 60K price tag, but now it's about 100K. But it does vary with locations. And I've read some of the comments in the new media comparing studio apartment with two-room flats, but they are comparing apple with lemons, because some are in, some studio apartments was in very highly popular locations versus two-room flats in non-mature estates. And of course, there must be a price difference to reflect the difference in locations.
MP for Jurong GRC David Ong argued for the government to review housing policies to allow more housing options for Singaporeans with foreign spouses. He called the current non-citizen spouse scheme a prejudice against younger citizens with foreign spouses. Currently, foreign spouses can qualify for built-to-order or BTO flats if they have children who are Singaporean citizens. Those without children can apply to buy a two-room BTO flat in non-mature estates if they meet the age and income criteria and are HDB first-timers. But Mr. Ong pointed out that the scheme has an age restriction of 35 years and couples can only buy two-room flats, which may not be pro-family.
This appears prejudice against the younger Singaporean citizens who are married to foreign spouses. I think we have now about 8,100 marriages involving such family units, and so my question is that whether the ministry can review this policy and make it more pro-family so that such younger family units can not only own a BTO flat, but perhaps a three-room flat so they can start their family earlier.
Madam, we are always pro-family. And I think once they have citizen children, the age limit of 35 does not apply. But of course, for those without children yet, then the spouse can apply to become PR or even become citizen.
Still on housing, the Home Protection Scheme, or HPS, will continue to exclude HDB flat owners with pre-existing illnesses, says Acting Minister for Manpower, Tan Chuan Jin. He was responding to queries by MP Lee Bee Wah on whether the government will consider extending the mortgage insurance cover, which protects CPF members from losing their HDB flats if they are unable to pay their housing loans. Between 2011 and July this year, about 1.3% of HPS applications were rejected because of serious pre-existing medical conditions.
Extending HPS coverage to all CPF members with pre-existing medical conditions would have implications on the affordability of premiums for members and the viability of the HPS. These are the same concerns and considerations that apply to every insurance programs. Various assistance schemes are available to help those members. But CPF Board will also work closely with the Ministry of National Development to study other options to help them as well.
Tighter lending restrictions, which kick in on 1st June 2015, will be properly calibrated to limit the pressure on vulnerable borrowers. Deputy Prime Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam said this in response to MP Foo Mee Har's question on whether new borrowing limits aimed at managing levels of unsecured debt held by individuals may drive borrowers into unregulated or illegal alternatives. Last month, the government announced that by June 2015, all individuals' total borrowings across all financial institutions must not exceed 12 months of his income. Mr. Tharman said today that the 12 months limit is a soft rule for now, but will be hardened gradually. He added that banks should make their own judgments to avoid forcing borrowers into unregulated markets from now until 2015.
We've had to calibrate these rules such that we don't drive people into the unregulated, let alone illegal market. And that's why we're giving them time to work their debts down. And I think through Credit Counselling Singapore, as well as the bank's own efforts, some efforts can be made case by case to try to restructure their debts.
The Land Transport Authority will extend the Green Man Plus scheme to 500 more pedestrian crossings by 2015. It will also extend the audio-tactile system to help the visually impaired cross roads safely. Parliamentary Secretary for Transport Faisal Ibrahim said these are part of the 2013 Land Transport Master Plan's aims to ensure Singapore's transport system can support a livable and inclusive community.
Our sheltered walkways, including the 200-kilometre mall that will be built as part of the Walk to Ride program under LTMP 2013, will offer rest areas to make walking more comfortable for the seniors. Another 40 overhead bridges will have lifts installed by 2018.
I wonder if the ministry is working with the commercial buildings to ensure the Walk to Ride scheme cover those commercial and industrial buildings so that accessibility, especially sheltered linkway to the MRT station, is also part and parcel of the plan.
We are looking at how we can facilitate the movement of our commuters and pedestrians to the MRT station. So if, let's say, such buildings are part of the process or part of the journey in the process of commuters going to the MRT station, I think we will look into it and we will consider as and when it's necessary.
Meanwhile, some MPs are hoping LTA can accelerate installing pedestrian crossings at estates with more elderly residents.
Tanjong Ru Estate, you gave us an overhead bridge, but it is too much effort for the elderly people to climb up the overhead bridge.
We have announced earlier some of the areas that we are looking at is to firstly to install lifts at some of the pedestrian overhead bridge, and we want to ensure that those localized areas whereby they face such challenge, I think we will work together with the local MPs and advisors of the community to see how we can facilitate the movement of people.
The Law Ministry has reminded foreign law firms that specific areas of legal practice can only be handled by Singapore law firms. These include litigation, criminal law, family law and conveyancing. In response to a question by Lim Biao Chuan, Law and Foreign Affairs Minister K. Shanmugam noted that Clifford Chance, an international law firm, released media statements promoting itself as the first international firm offering litigation advice. He said that it was a misleading statement suggesting that foreign law firms can now practice litigation in Singapore.
My senior officials have called in the partners of Clifford Chance and the local law firm, Kavanagh Law, and told them that their statements conveyed an inaccurate picture and should be stopped. On the whole, the law firms appear to have been complying. Where we have noticed a transgression or what appears to be a transgression or inaccurate or misleading statement, we will certainly call them up. And in this case, Honourable Member has filed a question, and I'm sure the firms involved will take careful note of what I've said.
The Law Ministry is considering if it should use site blocking to counter the ease of accessing copyright-infringing material online. But Senior Minister of Law INDRANEE RAJAH stressed that while site blocking is one way to reduce online piracy, it is not the solution. Ms. INDRANEE said a multi-pronged approach is needed to address Singapore's copyright and digital piracy challenges. This would comprise public education, appropriate regulatory measures, and the promotion of legitimate digital content services.
Clearly, consumers desire to have access to content. If legitimate content is accessible at a reasonable price, then I think most people would be willing to go for that. There will always be those who may be inclined to access pirated material if it's free, but by and large, if you have appropriate public education and there is a general sense of respecting copyright and intellectual property rights, then people would be encouraged to move towards legitimate content if it's made accessible.
Even with the availability of legitimate content sources, evidence at least in other countries where there is site blocking still shows that people will go ahead to download it for free, even if the content is available in a timely manner and even if it's affordable. So the question is site blocking therefore, in this instance, a more effective way?
There isn't any one single measure which on its own is a magic or silver bullet that will resolve online piracy. The nature of online piracy is such that it is difficult to police, and I don't think that even with site blocking it would be 100% solution.
Parliament has passed amendments to the property tax bill to render it more progressive. Owners of vacant residential and non-residential properties will no longer be able to apply for tax refunds. Instead, they will be taxed at owner-occupied rates. Senior Minister of State for Finance, Josephine Teo, says this change is in line with the intent of property tax as a tax on wealth, regardless of whether the property is vacant or occupied.
This set of changes to property tax was not designed, was not introduced for revenue-raising purposes. It was purely to make our property tax structure more progressive, which was something that we did in 2011, and we're taking it one step further.
Mrs. Teo also explained how the income tax bill has been changed. One is on the exchange of information, whereby the Inland Revenue Authority of Singapore, or IRAS, will now be allowed to obtain information protected under the Banking Act and Trust Companies Act without having to seek a court order. In doing so, however, she assured MPs that IRAS will render such assistance only for clear, specific and legitimate requests. The second change involves enhancing the productivity and innovation credit or PIC scheme. Mrs. Teo said small and medium enterprises or SMEs are now eligible for PIC scheme benefits when they license intellectual property rather than acquire it outright. Qualifying businesses which make productivity investments will be given a dollar-for-dollar matching PIC bonus. This bonus is on top of existing PIC benefits capped at a total of $15,000.
I would like to ask the Minister whether she is assured that the vast resources being dedicated to supporting productivity programs are indeed effective, or whether we need a review of the productivity programs or change initiatives.
It takes time for the results to become visible. In the meantime, we can expect short-term productivity fluctuations due to economic cycles and volatility. In fact, economists know this. It is often more sensible to compare productivity changes from decade to decade and to monitor sector-specific productivity measures. At this stage of our push for productivity-driven growth, what is most important is for businesses to get started on their productivity journey, to learn, to invest in improvements, and to sustain the effort over time.
And the third bill passed today, amendments to the Jurong Town Corporation Bill, which Minister for Trade and Industry Lim Hng Kiang says will ensure sufficient supply and stability in the industrial property market. The proposed amendment provides JTC with a new function. The corporation will take the lead to collect, analyze and publish more comprehensive statistical data on the industrial property market in Singapore. The Urban Redevelopment Authority will retain its authority to collect, analyze and publish statistics in all property sectors. Now, 6 new government bills were introduced in Parliament today. One of them involves proposed changes to the Employment Act, which aim to enhance employment protection for workers. The bill proposes to raise the salary threshold for non-workmen from a basic monthly salary of $2,000 to $2,500. Clerical staff and frontline service staff are among those who fall into the category of non-workmen. Professionals, managers and executives or PMEs earning a basic monthly salary of up to $4,500 will also be protected under general provisions, which includes protection against unfair dismissal and sick leave benefits. The new bill also has other measures which provides flexibility for employers in dealing with work-related issues. The Home Affairs Ministry has also introduced amendments to the Criminal Law Bill. This aims to extend the operation of the Act for another 5 years from 21st October 2014. The Act provides for the maintenance of public safety, peace and good order through the detention and supervision of individuals associated with criminal activities. The Act was implemented in 1955 and has since been extended 12 times. Since 1959, each extension has been for 5 years. The other 4 new bills introduced today were amendments to the Goods and Services Tax Bill, the Motor Vehicles Bill, the Road Traffic Bill and the Central Provident Fund Bill. Nominated MP Teo Seong Sing filed a motion for adjournment to highlight the challenges faced by small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs. He said a recent survey shows SMEs face 2 salient challenges: manpower and business premises. Speaking in Mandarin, Mr. Teo said he hopes the government can provide affordable space for SMEs and also take a clear and long-term approach when planning land allocation for them. Noting Mr. Teo's concerns, Minister of State for Trade and Industry Teo Ser La said the government will maintain a stable and sustainable market where rentals remain competitive and affordable.
We have also released smaller IGLS land parcels with shorter tenure to provide more affordable options for SMEs. Over the next 5 years, about 230,000 square meters of new office space and 120,000 square meters of new shop space will be completed each year. This is higher than the annual demand of 140,000 square meters of office space and 70,000 square meters of shop space over the last 5 years.
And those are the highlights from Parliament. Good night.